Millionaire surgeon vanished after a night shift. The next day, his ID badge floated in a reservoir. In the bustling heart of Seattle, where the rain-slicked streets reflected the glow of towering glass skyscrapers, Dr. Alexander Hale lived a life that seemed pulled straight from the pages of a success story. At 48, he was the lead cardiovascular surgeon at Harborview Medical Center, one of the city's premier hospitals, where he commanded respect in the operating room like a conductor leading a symphony. His hands, steady and precise, had saved hundreds of lives over the years, bypassing blocked arteries, mending torn aortas, and pulling patients back from the brink during marathon procedures that could stretch into the early hours. Alex, as his colleagues called him, wasn't just good. He was exceptional, the kind of doctor who turned high-risk cases into textbook triumphs. His annual salary topped 7 figures, augmented by smart investments in medical tech startups and a stake in a chain of upscale clinics. He drove a sleek black Tesla through the misty mornings, its quiet hum a far cry from the chaotic ER below. But beneath the polished exterior of his professional world, Alex's life was anchored in something far more grounding: his family. He and his wife, Elena, had built a home in the upscale neighborhood of Madison Park, overlooking Lake Washington. Their house was a modern marvel, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the water's shimmering surface, a chef's kitchen where Elena experimented with farm-to-table recipes, and a backyard deck perfect for summer barbecues. Elena, a former nurse who'd pivoted to running a boutique wellness center, was the steady force in their marriage. They'd met during Alex's residency, bonding over late-night shifts and shared dreams of a quieter life someday. Now, with their 2 kids, 16-year-old Mia, a sharp-witted sophomore obsessed with environmental science, and 12-year-old Theo, a soccer prodigy with boundless energy, their days were a whirlwind of school runs, piano recitals, and weekend hikes in the Cascades. On a typical crisp autumn evening, just weeks before everything changed, Alex arrived home later than usual. The clock on the dashboard read 8:47 p.m. as he pulled into the driveway, the scent of pine and damp earth wafting through the cracked window. He'd just wrapped a grueling 14-hour shift, assisting on an emergency triple bypass for a construction worker who'd collapsed on a downtown site. His scrubs were tucked away in his locker, replaced by a crisp button-down and slacks, but the weight of the day lingered in his shoulders. As he stepped inside, the warmth of the foyer enveloped him, soft lighting from the pendant lamps, the faint aroma of garlic and rosemary from Elena's roasting chicken. "Dad, you're finally here," Mia called from the living room, her voice carrying over the hum of the TV. She was sprawled on the couch, textbooks scattered around her like fallen leaves, highlighting notes for a biology project on climate change. Theo bounded in from the kitchen, soccer ball under his arm, his face flushed from practice. "Mom says dinner's almost ready. Can we eat on the deck? It's not raining for once." Alex chuckled, dropping his leather briefcase by the door and loosening his tie. "Sounds perfect, buddy. Let me just wash up." He leaned down to ruffle Theo's hair, then crossed to the kitchen where Elena was sliding a tray of vegetables into the oven. She turned, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail, and smiled, that easy, knowing smile that always made the exhaustion fade. "Rough one today?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "The usual chaos," he replied, pulling her into a quick hug. "Lost a patient in the OR this morning. Young guy. Car accident. It sticks with you." His voice softened, the admission rare for him. Alex wasn't one to dwell on failures. He compartmentalized, focusing on the wins. But Elena knew the toll it took, the quiet moments when he'd stare out at the lake, lost in thought. They ate under the string lights on the deck, the city lights twinkling across the water like distant stars. Conversation flowed effortlessly, Mia debating the ethics of carbon offsets, Theo recounting a goal he'd scored that nearly hit the neighbor's window. Alex listened more than he spoke, savoring the normalcy. He'd always prided himself on being present, even when his pager buzzed with calls from the hospital. Lately, though, there'd been subtle shifts. A new administrator at work pushing for cost-cutting measures that meant longer hours for less support staff. Whispers of a merger that could upend his department. And personally, Elena had mentioned wanting to expand her wellness center, a dream that would require dipping into their savings. Savings Alex had meticulously built as a buffer against uncertainty. As the meal wound down, Alex helped clear the plates, the clink of dishes against the sink a rhythmic backdrop. "You heading back in tonight?" Elena asked, her tone casual but laced with concern. Night shifts were part of his routine, especially with the hospital's understaffing, but they chipped away at their time together. "Just a quick consult around midnight," he said, drying a glass. "Should be home by dawn." "Promise." He kissed her forehead, then called out to the kids about homework before grabbing his coat. The drive back to the hospital was a blur of wet streets and glowing taillights, the radio murmuring news about a tech boom downtown. Alex felt the familiar pull of duty, mixed with a quiet gratitude for the life waiting at home. If you've ever wondered how a single night can unravel everything, stick with me. This story gets even more gripping. Thanks for watching so far. If you're hooked on these real-feeling mysteries, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the twists ahead. Little did they know that routine night shift would be the last time anyone saw Alex Hale alive. His world, so meticulously balanced between scalpel-sharp precision and family warmth, was on the cusp of fracturing. In the days leading up to it, he'd seemed his usual self, confident, driven, the man who juggled board meetings with Little League games without breaking a sweat. Colleagues at the hospital remembered him joking in the break room that afternoon, sharing coffee with a resident who'd just aced her boards. "You've got the hands for this," he'd told her, clapping her on the back. "Don't let the bureaucracy grind you down." At home, the Hales had plans brewing. Mia was eyeing college applications, dreaming of studying marine biology at the University of Washington. Theo's team had a tournament coming up, and Alex had cleared his schedule to coach from the sidelines. Elena, ever the planner, was sketching out a family trip to the San Juan Islands for spring break, ferry rides, kayaking, a chance to unplug from the city's relentless pace. "We need this," she'd said to Alex over breakfast that morning, as rain pattered against the kitchen window. "Just us, no pagers, no emergencies." He'd nodded, squeezing her hand. "You're right. Life's too short for what-ifs." It was a throwaway line, the kind couples exchange without a second thought. But in retrospect, those words hung heavy, a subtle undercurrent in their otherwise steady rhythm. Alex's success hadn't come easy. Born to working-class parents in a small Oregon town, he'd clawed his way through med school on scholarships and grit, vowing never to let his family worry about money the way his had. Millionaire status was a byproduct, private jets to conferences, a vacation home in the Rockies, but he wore it lightly, donating chunks to local charities and mentoring young surgeons from underserved communities. Friends envied his poise, but those closest saw the cracks, the occasional insomnia, the way he'd rub his temples after a tough case, questioning if the grind was worth it. On the evening of October 12th, as fog rolled in off the Sound, Alex kissed his family goodbye once more. "Love you all," he said from the doorway, his voice warm against the chill. The door clicked shut, and the house settled into its evening quiet. The hum of the dishwasher, Mia's laughter from upstairs, Theo's sneakers thumping on the stairs. Outside, Alex's Tesla purred to life, headlights cutting through the dusk as he headed back to the hospital, unaware that this ordinary drive would lead to the edge of the unknown. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights greeted Alex as he pulled into the hospital's underground garage just before 11 p.m. Harborview's parking structure was a concrete labyrinth, echoing with the distant rumble of ambulances and the squeak of gurneys being wheeled in from the ER. Rain had picked up again, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers, turning the night into a blurry watercolor of sodium vapor glows and puddles. Alex grabbed his ID badge from the visor, clipped to a lanyard with the hospital's logo, and slung his bag over his shoulder, the weight of it pulling at his tired frame. He texted Elena on the way, "Here now, love you." Simple words, but they anchored him. Inside, the cardiovascular wing was a hive of controlled urgency. Nurses in colorful scrubs darted between rooms, monitors beeping in steady rhythms, the sharp tang of antiseptic cutting through the air. Alex nodded to the charge nurse, Maria. a no-nonsense veteran with a ponytail streaked gray from years of double shifts. "Dr. Hale, you're a lifesaver for covering this," she said, handing him a tablet with patient charts. "Consult on bed 14. Post-op complications from that bypass you did last week. He's stable but restless." "No problem," Alex replied, scanning the screen as he walked. His steps were measured, the rubber soles of his loafers silent on the linoleum. The consult room was dim, lit only by the glow of vital signs displays. The patient, a burly man named Carl in his 50s, lay propped up, an IV dripping steadily into his arm. "How's the pain tonight, Carl?" Alex asked, pulling up a stool. "Like a truck's parked on my chest, Doc." Carl grunted, his voice rough from the breathing tube he'd had earlier. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. Alex checked the monitors, heart rate elevated, but nothing critical. They talked through it, adjusting meds, monitoring for clots. It was routine, the kind of work that felt like second nature after 2 decades in the field. By midnight, Carl was settled, and Alex moved on to rounds, peering into darkened rooms where patients slept under the watchful eyes of machines. The night stretched on, a blur of charts and quiet consultations. Around 2 a.m. in the break room, Alex poured himself a coffee, black, scalding hot, from the ancient machine that always tasted faintly burnt. The room was empty save for a resident dozing in the corner, her head on folded arms. He scrolled his phone briefly. A photo Elena had sent of Theo asleep on the couch, soccer cleats still on. A smile tugged at his lips, easing the knot in his back. The hospital's merger talks had heated up that day. Emails from admin about streamlining staff hours. It gnawed at him, more pressure on an already stretched team, but he pushed it aside. Focus on the now. By 4:30 a.m., the shift wound down. The sky outside was still pitch black, the city asleep under a blanket of drizzle. Alex signed off on the last notes in the nurse's station, the keyboard clacking softly. "Good night, everyone," he called to the skeleton crew. Maria waved from behind the desk. "Drive safe, Doc. Roads are slick." He took the elevator down, the descent feeling longer than usual, his mind already drifting to home, shower, bed, maybe breakfast with the kids before Mia's school. The garage was colder now, the rain a steady patter on the levels above. His Tesla was parked in its usual spot, 3rd row from the exit, under a flickering light that buzzed like a trapped fly. Alex unlocked it with a chirp, tossed his bag in the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. The engine whispered to life, the dashboard lighting up with the time. 4:42 a.m. He adjusted the seat warmer against the chill seeping through his coat and pulled out, tires hissing on the wet pavement. The drive home was eerily quiet. I-5, a ribbon of empty lanes flanked by looming evergreens and the occasional glow of a 24-hour diner. Fog clung to the windshield, forcing Alex to crank the wipers. His phone buzzed once, a reminder for Theo's practice later, but he let it sit, hands firm on the wheel. Madison Park was about 20 minutes away, a straight shot through the pre-dawn gloom. He thought about stopping for gas, but the tank was half full. No need. The radio played low, a news segment on rising healthcare costs that made him snort softly. Irony at its finest. But then, somewhere around the 15-minute mark, the route veered slightly. Instead of merging toward the lake, Alex's Tesla continued straight on a lesser-used artery, past the familiar exits for his neighborhood. It was a detour he wouldn't have chosen, toward the industrial edges of the city, where warehouses squatted like silent giants, and the Duwamish River slunk through underpasses. Why? No one would ever know for sure. Maybe a moment of distraction, a wrong turn in the fog, or perhaps something more deliberate, a pull toward solitude after the night's wait. The car's GPS logs later showed it, a sharp left onto a service road paralleling the water, headlights cutting through the mist toward the Ross Reservoir, a man-made basin used for stormwater runoff, its edges fringed with chain link and warning signs about deep water. At 5:07 a.m., the Tesla's cameras captured the last image, the car slowing near the reservoir's overlook, a desolate spot where construction crews parked during the day. The door opened. Alex stepped out, his figure blurred by the rain, coat flapping in the wind off the water. He walked a few paces toward the chain link fence, The reservoir below a black mirror reflecting the first hints of gray dawn. Then, nothing. The car door remained ajar, engine idling softly until it auto-shutoff kicked in minutes later. Back home, Elena stirred around 6 a.m., the alarm clock's gentle chime pulling her from sleep. The bed beside her was empty, the sheets cool. She padded downstairs in her robe, expecting the coffee maker's gurgle or Alex flipping pancakes. But the kitchen was silent, counters wiped clean from the night before. Mia shuffled in next, rubbing her eyes, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad home yet? I need a ride to school." Elena checked her phone. No messages since the one at 11. "He should be. Let me call." The line rang straight to voicemail, his calm voice asking to leave a message. She tried again, then texted, "Everything okay? Kids are up." Minutes ticked by. Theo bounded down, cereal bowl in hand. "Where's Dad? He promised to time my sprints today." By 7 a.m., unease had settled in like the morning chill. Elena dialed the hospital. "This is Elena Hale. Is my husband still there?" "Dr. Alexander Hale." The voice on the other end was puzzled. "No, ma'am. He signed out at 4:30. Everything all right?" She hung up, heart picking up pace. The house felt too still, the lake view outside mocking her with its serene ripple. She paced the living room, phone clutched tight, calling friends, colleagues. "Have you heard from Alex? He hasn't come home." Mia watched from the stairs, her usual sarcasm gone, replaced by wide-eyed worry. "Mom? What's going on?" Elena forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Probably just stuck in traffic. Go get ready for school. But inside, a knot tightened. She stepped onto the deck, the rain now a light mist, and stared at the empty driveway. The Tesla wasn't there. No sign of him. Word spread quickly in their tight-knit circle. By 8:30, Elena had notified the police. A missing persons report for a 48-year-old male, last seen leaving work. "He's never done this," she told the dispatcher, voice cracking for the first time. "Something's wrong." Across town, a maintenance worker at the reservoir arrived for his shift around 9 a.m., the sun finally breaking through clouds in weak shafts. He lit a cigarette by the fence, exhaling into the damp air, when something caught his eye bobbing in the water below. A flash of plastic amid the debris of leaves and branches. He squinted, then fetched a net from his truck. Fishing it out, he turned it over. A hospital ID badge, photo of a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair. Name, Dr. Alexander Hale. Affiliation, Harborview Medical Center. The worker's hands shook as he dialed 911. "Found this in the reservoir. Looks important, like someone might be in trouble." The badge was waterlogged but intact, the lanyard tangled with weeds. No car nearby, no body in sight. Just the quiet lap of water against the concrete edge and the sudden, chilling void where a life had been. The discovery of Dr. Alexander Hale's ID badge sent ripples through the quiet morning at the Ross Reservoir, a forgotten corner of Seattle's industrial underbelly where the Duwamish's murky waters fed into the basin. The maintenance worker, a grizzled man named Javier Ruiz, who'd patrolled these edges for 2 decades, stood frozen by the chain-link fence, the net dripping in his calloused hands. The badge's photo stared up at him. Alex's face, professional and composed, now marred by water spots and a tear along the edge. Javier's radio crackled as he waited for the cops, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt and diesel from a distant barge chugging along the waterway. Overhead, gulls wheeled in the strengthening sun, their cries sharp against the low hum of morning traffic on the nearby interstate. By 9:45 a.m., Seattle PD had cordoned off the site with yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. Detective Lara Voss, a seasoned investigator in her mid-40s with a no-frills ponytail and a coffee stain on her jacket, arrived first. She'd seen her share of vanishings in this rain-soaked city, hikers lost in the Olympics, runaways from the suburbs, but a high-profile surgeon? That was different. "What have we got?" she asked Javier, snapping on gloves before taking the badge into evidence. "Found it floating about 10 feet out," he replied, pointing to the water's edge where ripples lapped at graffiti-scarred concrete. "No sign of a car or nothing, just this." The reservoir was deep here, over 20 feet in spots, designed to swallow floodwaters from the surrounding warehouses and rail yards. Divers would be needed, but the murkiness, stirred by last night's storm, made visibility a nightmare. Elena Hale's phone buzzed while she was in the kitchen, pouring cereal for Theo with hands that trembled just enough to spill the milk. Mia hovered nearby, her phone glued to her ear as she texted friends, the group's chat lighting up with questions she couldn't answer. The house in Madison Park felt cavernous, the lake outside a mocking expanse of calm under the patchy blue sky. When Elena answered, Voss's voice was steady but urgent. "Mrs. Hale, this is Detective Voss with Seattle PD. We need you to come down to the reservoir off the Duwamish. We found something of your husband's." Elena's world tilted. "What, is he?" She couldn't finish, gripping the counter as Theo looked up, spoon paused midair. "Mom? Just come. We'll explain." Voss hung up, her mind already racing through protocols. Missing persons for adults over 24 hours got low priority unless foul play screamed obvious, but this badge changed things. It suggested accident, or worse. Elena bundled the kids into her SUV, the drive a blur of rain-slicked highways and the Space Needle piercing the skyline like a forgotten landmark. Theo fidgeted in the back, kicking the seat. "Dad's fine, right? Maybe he dropped it fishing or something." Mia shot him a look, her voice tight. "Dad hates fishing, Theo. This is serious." Elena's knuckles whitened on the wheel, memories flashing. Alex's laugh at dinner, his hand on her back during walks along the lake path. How had a routine night become this? At the reservoir, the scene was a hive of activity. Police cruisers idled with lights flashing, casting blue strobes across the chain link. A news van had pulled up, a reporter peering from the barrier, microphone in hand. Elena parked haphazardly and rushed forward, Voss meeting her halfway. "Mrs. Hale, I'm so sorry. This is Alex's badge, found floating this morning." Elena took it, her fingers tracing the familiar photo, the lanyard still damp and smelling faintly of river mud. "Where is he? Oh God, is he in the water?" Her voice broke, drawing stares from the uniforms milling about. Mia clutched Theo's hand, the boy's face paling as he stared at the dark basin, its surface now dotted with buoys marking dive zones. "We're searching," Voss said gently, guiding them to a folding chair away from the tape. "Divers are going in now. No sign of the car yet. But we're checking traffic cams and pinging his phone. She didn't mention the odds. Bodies in water like this could take days to surface if they did at all, snagged on rebar or sucked into the outflow pipes toward Elliott Bay." The first dive team splashed in around 11 a.m., their bubbles rising like hesitant breaths. The water was frigid, 50 degrees, churning with silt from the storm drains. Lead diver, a burly guy named Ramirez, surfaced after 20 minutes, shaking his head. "Nothing down there but junk, tires, shopping carts. Visibility's crap, maybe 2 feet." They tried again, then a third time, but the reservoir's depth and debris turned it into a futile slog. By noon, the team pulled out, frustrated, their wetsuits steaming in the chill air. Word leaked fast. Harborview's admin called Elena mid-afternoon, the chief of surgery's voice grave over the line. "We're all praying. Alex's family here. We've got counselors on site if you need." Colleagues flooded her inbox, residents who'd scrubbed in with him, nurses like Maria who'd shared shifts. "He was heading home," Maria texted. "Talked about breakfast with the kids. This doesn't make sense." Police canvassed the area, knocking on doors of nearby warehouses where night shift workers loaded trucks under sodium lights. "Seen a black Tesla around 5 a.m.? Voss asked a forklift operator, a woman in grease-stained overalls wiping her brow. "Nah, but the fog was thick. Coulda drove right by without nothing." Traffic cams from I-5 showed the Tesla exiting toward the industrial zone at 4:55 a.m., then vanishing into side roads without plates catching the detour. Alex's phone pinged last at 5:12, near the reservoir, before going dark, battery dead or tossed. Elena brought the kids home by evening, the sun dipping low and painting the lake gold, a cruel contrast to the ache in her chest. She tucked Theo in early, reading him a story about soccer stars, her voice steady until it wasn't. "Dad'll be back soon, right?" he whispered, eyes shiny. "He has to coach my game." Mia retreated to her room, scrolling news alerts on her laptop, the glow illuminating her tear-streaked face. "Mom, what if?" Elena pulled her close. "We wait. We fight for answers." But the initial push faltered. By nightfall, the dive-op was scaled back. Budget constraints? Voss explained over coffee at the station, the fluorescent buzz overhead mirroring Elena's headache. "We're treating it as a possible drowning, but without the car or body. It's circumstantial. We'll drag the water tomorrow, check CCTV from the hospital garage." Searches expanded. K9 units sniffed the reservoir banks, their handlers calling through the dusk as dogs whined at faint scents that led nowhere. Helicopters buzzed overhead once, spotlights sweeping the water like accusatory fingers, but fog rolled in again, grounding them. Friends rallied. Elena's sister flew in from Portland, stocking the fridge with meals while neighbors dropped off casseroles on the porch, the steam rising like unspoken sympathies. The media frenzy built. Local outlets ran segments. "Beloved surgeon missing, clue found in river." A tip line lit up with crank calls, but nothing solid. Alex's Tesla turned up 2 days later, towed from a scrapyard lot a mile away, reported abandoned by a security guard. No prints beyond Alex's, no blood. Just the keys in the ignition and his bag on the seat, wallet intact. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of dead ends. Police interviews dragged. Elena recounting his stresses, the merger, a malpractice suit from a year back that had been dropped but lingered like a shadow. Colleagues mentioned his fatigue, the admin pressures cutting staff. "He was solid," one resident said in a taped statement, voice cracking. "But the job, it wears you down." No enemies surfaced. No debts beyond the wellness center loan. The reservoir drags yielded rusted bikes and a stolen bike frame, but no Alex. Elena lay awake nights, staring at the empty side of the bed, the house echoing with absence. Mia's grades slipped. Theo's soccer cleats gathered dust in the hall. The badge sat on the mantel, a plastic talisman of what was lost. Voss called weakly. "We're still looking, but leads are drying up." The search, so frantic at first, ebbed into quiet persistence. The city's pulse moving on while the hails clung to the void, questions piling like autumn leaves. Why the detour? What pulled him to that edge? The mystery deepened. The initial failure a heavy fog no one could pierce. Months slipped by in Seattle's relentless drizzle, turning the crisp autumn air into the bone-chilling damp of winter. The Hale house in Madison Park, once alive with the clatter of family routines, now carried an undercurrent of stillness that no amount of holiday lights could chase away. Elena moved through the days like a shadow of herself, her wellness center appointments a forced anchor to normalcy. She'd expanded it just before Alex vanished, pouring their savings into a new yoga studio with bamboo floors and essential oil diffusers that filled the air with lavender calm. But now, as she led classes overlooking the lake, its surface often whipped by wind into choppy gray waves, her mind wandered to the reservoir, that industrial scar on the city's edge where answers had first teased and then evaporated. The first holiday season without Alex hit hardest around Thanksgiving. Elena stood in the kitchen, turkey roasting in the oven, its savory scent mingling with the pine from the tree Mia and Theo had half-heartedly decorated. The kids were quieter now, their laughter rarer, replaced by the soft glow of screens in separate rooms. Theo, at 12, had taken to drawing soccer fields on napkins during meals, his small sketches featuring a stick-figure dad on the sidelines, whistle in hand. "He'd want us to keep playing," Elena said one evening as she tucked him in, the room lit by a nightlight shaped like a goalpost. Theo nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, where shadows from the rain-streaked window danced like ghosts. Mia, turning 17 that December, threw herself into schoolwork with a fierce intensity, her environmental science projects now laced with themes of loss and resilience, essays on ecosystems disrupted by sudden absences. She avoided the lake view from her bedroom, instead spending hours at the local library. its wooden shelves heavy with the musty scent of old books and fresh coffee from the corner cafe. "I can't look at it without thinking of him driving home," she confided to Elena one night over chamomile tea in the living room, the fireplace crackling softly against the chill seeping through the windows. Elena reached across the coffee table, cluttered with sympathy cards yellowing at the edges, and squeezed her daughter's hand. "None of us can, but we're still here, Mia. We have to keep going." Detective Voss's updates came sporadically, phone calls that Elena dreaded yet craved, delivered in the detective's gravelly voice from her desk at the station, surrounded by the hum of printers and the bitter tang of overbrewed coffee. "We've re-interviewed the scrapyard guy. Says the Tesla was just there. No tow report before he called it in," Voss reported in early December, her words clipped as holiday sirens wailed faintly in the background. "Phone's still offline, no pings. We're cross-checking financials again, but nothing jumps out. No large withdrawals, no suspicious calls." Elena paced the deck during these talks, the wood slick under her slippers, staring at the buoys bobbing on the lake like distant warnings. The reservoir searches had officially halted after a final drag in November, yielded only more urban trash, a submerged shopping cart, a rusted license plate from the 90s, but private tips kept trickling in. Anonymous emails about suspicious figures near the water that led to empty lots and false hopes. Harborview hadn't forgotten Alex. The hospital named a surgical suite after him in January, a plaque gleaming under the sterile lights of the cardiovascular wing. "In memory of Dr. Alexander Hale, saving lives with precision and heart." Colleagues like Maria visited the Hales on weekends, bringing Tupperware of homemade tamales, their steam rising as they sat around the kitchen island. "He'd be proud of you kids," Maria said to Theo during one such gathering, her eyes crinkling with unshed tears as she watched him kick a foam ball against the wall. "Told me once how you were going to be the next big thing on the field." Theo paused, ball thumping softly to the floor. "Does it get easier, Aunt Maria? Missing him?" She pulled him into a hug, the scent of her floral perfume mixing with the spices from the food. "Not really, mijo, but it changes. You carry it with you." Winter deepened, snow flurries dusting the evergreens along the I-90 bridge, turning commutes into cautious crawls. Elena started therapy sessions at her own center, ironic circles in the softly lit room where Tibetan singing bowls hummed during meditations. "Tell me about the last time you saw him," her counselor prompted one gray afternoon, rain tapping the roof like impatient Morse code. Elena described the kiss on the forehead, the promise of dawn. "He was tired but happy, talking about the trip to the islands." The words hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting past to present. Financially, they were stable, Alex's life insurance policy in limbo pending closure, but his investments ticked steadily upward, managed by a quiet advisor who visited with spreadsheets and condolences. Still, Elena sold the vacation home in the Rockies that spring, the proceeds a buffer against the unknown. The empty cabin's stone fireplace now just a memory of family ski trips, laughter echoing off snow-capped peaks. As spring bloomed, cherry blossoms unfurling along the university paths, their pink petals carpeting sidewalks in fleeting beauty, the Hales adapted in fits and starts. Theo made the varsity soccer team, his first goal dedicated silently to Alex, the crowd's cheers a roar that drowned out the ache for a moment. Mia landed an internship at a local conservation group, her passion reignited by walks along the Duwamish Trail, where the river's industrial banks met wild salmon runs. "Dad would have loved this," she texted Elena from a field site, mud caking her boots, the sun glinting off the water. But nights were harder, the house settling with creaks that sounded like footsteps, never arriving. Elena kept Alex's side of the closet untouched, his wool coats hanging like sentinels, faint traces of his cologne lingering in the fibers. Voss called less often now, her investigations folding into cold case files, but a new lead surfaced in April, a blurry security cam from a warehouse across the reservoir, showing a figure near the fence around 5 a.m. on the night he vanished. Too grainy for identification, just a silhouette against the fog-shrouded dawn, coat flapping like a dark wing. Could be him. Could be a worker, Voss admitted over the line. The station's background noise, a murmur of radios and footsteps. We're enhancing it, but text slow. Elena's heart raced, a flicker of momentum in the stagnation. She drove to the reservoir alone one overcast Saturday, parking by the chain link where it all began. The water lapped indifferently, weeds choking the edges, a lone heron stabbing at fish in the shallows. "Where are you, Alex?" she whispered, the wind carrying her words away, leaving only the echo of unanswered questions. Time passed, carving subtle changes into the family's landscape. The way Theo's voice deepened, Mia's confidence sharpened. Elena's smile returned in quiet moments over morning coffee. Yet the mystery lingered like Seattle's perpetual mist, a veil over what might have been a simple accident or something far more tangled. The badge on the mantel gathered dust, a silent sentinel as life pressed on, fragile and unresolved. Summer arrived in Seattle with a deceptive warmth, the kind that coaxed people out to Pike Place Market for fresh salmon and the salty tang of sea air, while the ever-present threat of rain hovered on the horizon. For the Hale family, the season brought a fragile rhythm. Elena's wellness center buzzing with tourists seeking yoga retreats, Theo's soccer camps filling his days with the thud of cleats on turf and the sharp whistles of coaches under cloudless skies. Mia, now interning full-time, spent weekends knee-deep in river cleanups along the Duwamish, her hands gloved against the oily sludge, the water's surface glinting like shattered glass in the sunlight. The house in Madison Park hummed with a tentative normalcy. Barbecues on the deck with neighbors, the sizzle of burgers masking the hollow space at the table's head. But beneath it all, the unresolved ache pulsed steadily. Elena had taken to running along the lake path at dawn, her sneakers pounding the gravel in time with her breaths, the Olympic Mountains a jagged silhouette against the paling sky. It was on one such run in late July, as sweat beaded her forehead and the air hummed with cicadas, that her phone vibrated in her armband. She slowed, pulling it out mid-stride, heart leaping at the Seattle PD prefix. "Mrs. Hale, Detective Voss here. We need you at the station. Now. There's something you have to see." Elena's pulse quickened, a mix of dread and desperate hope flooding her veins. She cut her run short, driving straight to the precinct in Capitol Hill, the streets alive with joggers and coffee carts steaming under awnings. The station was a familiar hive, buzzing fluorescents, the clack of keyboards, officers murmuring into radios amid the scent of stale donuts and printer ink. Voss met her in the lobby, her face etched with lines deeper than before, eyes shadowed from too many late nights. "Come on back," she said, leading Elena down a corridor lined with case files stacked like forgotten promises. In a dimly lit conference room, the air conditioner hummed against the summer stickiness, papers scattered across a long table under the glare of a projector. Voss gestured to a chair, pouring Elena a styrofoam cup of water that trembled in her grip. "We've been digging into that warehouse footage from April. The blurry figure by the reservoir. Sent it to a tech firm for enhancement. It took months, budget cuts and all, but they pulled something." She clicked a remote, and the screen flickered to life. Grainy black and white frames time-stamped 5:03 a.m. October 12th. The fence loomed, fog swirling like smoke, but now the silhouette sharpened. A man in a coat, head bowed, walking toward the water's edge. It was Alex, unmistakable. The set of his shoulders, the way he ran a hand through his hair. Elena leaned forward, breath catching. "That's him. Oh God. That's Alex." But Voss paused the video, zooming in on a shadow behind him. Another figure emerging from the mist near a cluster of shipping containers rusted from years of salt air. Taller, hooded, movements deliberate. "Watch this," Voss said, restarting. The second figure approached, a brief exchange, too far for audio, but Alex turned, gesturing sharply. Then a scuffle, arms flailing. A push. Alex stumbled toward the fence, the reservoir yawning below. The hooded man backed away, vanishing into the fog as Alex's form teetered, then dropped from view. The room spun for Elena, the water sloshing in her cup. Foul play. Someone did this to him. Her voice cracked, raw with the injustice of it. Voss nodded slowly, rubbing her temple. Looks that way. No accident. We're pulling prints from the containers, recanvassing workers. But here's the kicker. We cross-referenced timestamps with hospital logs. Alex's consult that night? It wrapped early. He could have been home by 4, but he lingered. Why? Before Elena could respond, Voss slid a folder across the table, its edges worn. Inside were printouts, emails from Alex's work account, dated weeks before the disappearance. We subpoenaed his hospital server after the enhancement. These are drafts he never sent, rants about the merger, accusations against the new admin, Dr. Harlan Crow. Says Crow's cooking the books, pushing unsafe shortcuts to cut costs. Alex was compiling evidence, threatening to go public. Elena scanned the lines. Her surgeon husband's precise handwriting digitized, mentions of falsified patient outcomes, bribes to suppliers. He was scared, she whispered, remembering his late-night sighs over coffee, the rub of his temples. He didn't say, but yeah, the stress. Harlan, he was new, aggressive. Alex clashed with him in meetings. Voss leaned in, voice low. Crow's got a temper. Witnesses say he cornered Alex in the break room days before, yelling about loyalty. And get this, Crow's alibi for that morning? He was on call, but logs show he clocked out at 4:15 a.m. Plenty of time to tail Alex from the garage. Elena's mind reeled, the puzzle pieces snapping with a sickening clarity. Harlan Crow, mid-50s, slick suits, a transplant from a Chicago hospital with whispers of scandals in his wake. Alex had mentored his replacement resident once, but Crow? He'd eyed Alex's position like a prize, the merger promising his rise if stars like Alex were sidelined. The shock rippled outward that afternoon. Elena called Mia from the station parking lot, the sun beating down on the asphalt, her SUV's leather seats hot to the touch. "Mom, you okay?" Mia's voice echoed from a riverside site, the distant rush of water underscoring her words. "They have video, your dad. Someone was there with him. It wasn't an accident." A pause, then Mia's sharp intake. "Who? Tell me." Elena recounted it haltingly, the scuffle replaying in her mind like a nightmare loop. "Theo, at camp. Got the sanitized version later. Dad might have had an argument, but we're getting answers. His young face crumpling over FaceTime, cleats kicking dirt on the field. News broke by evening, local stations flashing. Breakthrough and surgeon vanishing. Video suggests foul play." Reporters swarmed the Hale driveway as Elena pulled in, microphones thrusting like spears, questions barking. "Do you suspect a colleague? Was it over the merger scandal?" She waved them off, slamming the door, the house's windows rattling. Inside, she gathered the kids on the couch, the lake view outside now a stormy gray as clouds gathered. "This changes everything," she said, voice steady for their sakes. "The police are moving fast. We might finally know." But the discovery unearthed more shadows. That night, Voss texted coordinates. Another dive at the reservoir, authorized anew with the video evidence. Elena couldn't sleep, pacing the kitchen where garlic still faintly lingered from old dinners, her phone lighting up with messages from Maria. "Heard about Crow. Alex warned me once, said the guy's ruthless, praying for justice." Theo curled up beside her at 2 a.m. whispering, "Will they find Dad now? Bring him home." Elena held him close, the weight of renewed grief pressing down, the shocking truth that Alex's life might have been stolen not by chance, but by betrayal, igniting a fire amid the embers of loss. By dawn, as rain resumed its patter on the roof, the dive team plunged back in, spotlights cutting the murk. This time, Ramirez's voice crackled over the radio from below. "Contact, something heavy, tangled in the outflow grate." Elena arrived at the site by 7 a.m., Voss at her side, the industrial air thick with diesel and wet earth. Hours ticked by, tugs on lines, the groan of winches. Until, with a final heave, they hauled it up. Not a body, but Alex's Tesla, wedged in the pipe 15 feet down. Its black frame scraped and barnacle-crusted, headlights shattered like blind eyes. The car was empty, no sign of Alex, but inside the glove box, sealed in a waterproof pouch, a USB drive, labeled in his neat script. For Elena, truth. Voss's team cracked it open at the station later, Elena watching over coffee gone cold. Files spilled out, audios of heated arguments with Crow, spreadsheets exposing embezzlement, patient records doctored to hide errors. Alex's voice recorded on his phone. "If anything happens to me, Elena, this is why. He's covering tracks, and I'm the loose end." The room fell silent, the weight of his foresight crashing down. Elena's tears came then, hot and unbidden, as the pieces aligned. The detour, the lingering at work, the push into the water. Crow was arrested that afternoon, protesting innocence from the back of a cruiser, his face pale under the flashing lights. "This is a setup," he shouted to reporters clustered by the precinct steps. But the evidence mounted, his prints on a container, a burner phone pinging near the reservoir. The shocking discovery wasn't just the video or the car. It was the revelation of a man driven to murder by greed, unraveling the life Alex had built with one desperate act. For the Hales, it was a gut-wrenching pivot. From accident to conspiracy, grief twisting into rage and a hunger for closure. As summer evenings stretched long, fireflies flickering over the lake, Elena sat on the deck, USB in hand, vowing silently, "We'll get you back, Alex, whatever it takes." The mystery, once a fog, now sharpened into focus, but the deepest questions, where his body lay, what final moments he endured, still echoed in the rain-soaked nights. Years have passed since that sweltering summer afternoon when Harlan Crow was led away in handcuffs, his tailored suit rumpled and his face twisted in denial under the relentless Seattle sun. The arrest made national headlines, transforming the Hale family's private nightmare into a cautionary tale splashed across news feeds and true crime podcasts. Today, in the crisp bite of another Pacific Northwest autumn, the case stands as a stark reminder of how ambition can fester into something deadly, leaving echoes in the lives it shattered. The reservoir, once a forgotten stormwater pit edged by rusting containers and the low rumble of freight trains, is now a marked site, fenced tighter, with a small memorial plaque bolted to the chain link, a simple bronze plate etched with Alex's name and dates, flowers wilting there in quiet vigil from strangers moved by the story. Crow's trial unfolded over 6 grueling months in King County Superior Court, a squat brick building downtown where the air always carried the faint must of old wood and hurried footsteps on marble floors. Elena testified first, her voice steady but laced with the raw edge of grief as she described the USB drive's contents, holding up the pouch like evidence of a ghost's warning. "Alex knew the risks," she said to the packed gallery, her eyes scanning faces, reporters scribbling, Maria dabbing tears with a tissue, Mia and Theo sitting rigid in the front row, their hands clasped under the bench. "He recorded everything because he trusted the truth would protect us, but it didn't protect him." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Reyes with a no-nonsense bob, played the audio clips. Alex's voice, calm yet urgent, detailing Crow's scheme to skim funds from the merger by inflating supply costs and burying complication rates to boost ratings for investors. Crow took the stand in his defense, his lawyer painting him as a scapegoat for a cutthroat industry. Dr. Hale was unstable, overworked, Crow claimed, his tone oily smooth, fingers drumming the witness box as rain streaked the courtroom windows outside. "He fabricated those files out of resentment. I was fixing a sinking ship, not sabotaging it." But the evidence piled against him like storm debris, his partial prints on the warehouse container, cell data placing his burner phone within 50 yards of the reservoir at 5:05 a.m., and a deleted email chain from his laptop showing threats to silence dissenters in the department. A whistleblower nurse, who'd overheard Crow muttering about Alex crossing lines, corroborated the tension, her testimony delivered in a whisper that carried through the hushed room. He said, "Some people don't know when to quit." It chilled me. The jury deliberated for 3 days, the wait agonizing for the Hales as they huddled in a nearby diner, the clink of coffee cups and sizzle of hash browns, a mundane counterpoint to their tension. Theo, now 17 and towering over Elena at 6'1", paced by the window, his soccer build honed from years of channeling anger into goals. "If they let him walk, Mom, I don't know what I'll do." Mia, 21 and home from her freshman year at UW, gripped Elena's hand, her environmental advocacy sharpened by the fight for justice. They won't. The video doesn't lie. When the verdict came, guilty on charges of first-degree murder and fraud, relief washed over them like a cleared sky after rain, but it was bittersweet. No resurrection for Alex. Crow was sentenced to life without parole, his appeals dragging into limbo as he rots in a Washington state prison, the clanging gates and fluorescent-lit cells a far cry from his corner office. The hospital merger collapsed under scrutiny, Harborview purging executives and installing ethics training, a quiet revolution born from one man's stand. Financially, the Hales received a settlement from the hospital's board, millions to cover the wellness center's expansion and the kids' futures, but Elena funneled much into a foundation in Alex's name, funding scholarships for med students from low-income backgrounds, the kind he once was. He'd want it to mean something, she told donors at a gala overlooking Elliott Bay, the ferry horns moaning in the distance like distant laments. Life for the family has stitched itself back, thread by fragile thread. Elena, at 50, runs her center with a quiet authority, her classes now including grief workshops where participants share stories under the soft glow of Himalayan salt lamps. The lake's ripple visible through rain-spattered glass. She's remarried gently, to a kind pediatrician named Mark who met her at a support group, his presence a steady warmth without erasing Alex's shadow. They live in the same Madison Park house, its decks hosting barbecues where laughter rings out again, though the empty chair at the head lingers in Elena's peripheral vision. Mark respects the space, joining Theo for pickup games in the yard, the thud of the ball a rhythmic therapy. Mia graduated with honors, her thesis on urban waterway pollution, dedicating a chapter to the Duwamish and Ross Reservoir, probing how industrial neglect mirrors human oversight. Dad's story isn't just tragedy, she says in interviews, her voice firm over the hum of a coffee shop blender. It's a call to protect what's hidden. She's dating a fellow activist, their weekend spent kayaking the Sound, the salt spray a balm against old wounds. Theo, a college freshman on a soccer scholarship at Gonzaga, calls home weekly, his dorm room posters of pro leagues mixed with a framed photo of Alex at his first game, whistle gleaming. "I scored twice last match, coach," he jokes to Elena over the line, the static crackle underscoring the miles. But in quieter moments like drives through Spokane's foggy streets, he admits the what-ifs still gnaw. Wish he could have seen it. What we know today is pieced from forensics and fragments. Alex was lured or followed to the reservoir, confronted over the evidence, and pushed in a moment of rage. His body likely swept into the bay's currents or snagged in the underwater maze. Divers scoured again post-trial, sonar pings echoing through the murk. But the sea keeps its secrets. Tides shifting debris, crabs scavenging what time erodes. No remains surfaced, leaving the Hales with a grave marker in a lakeside cemetery, etched wildflowers blooming around it in spring, tended by Elena's steady hands. The case closed officially 2 years ago, files archived in Voss's office now dusted with newer stacks. The detective retired last spring, bumping into Elena at a market stall piled with heirloom tomatoes, their red skins bursting with juice. "You fought hard," Voss said, hugging her briefly, the crowd's chatter fading. "He'd be damn proud." Elena nodded, basket heavy on her arm. "We all are, but it's never over, is it?" In the end, what we know is that greed claimed a hero, but resilience rebuilt a family. Alex Hale's legacy endures, not in the badge that floated to light, but in the lives he touched, the questions that drive us forward, and the quiet victories won against the rain. Years have passed since that sweltering summer afternoon when Harlan Crow was led away in handcuffs, his tailored suit rumpled and his face twisted in denial under the relentless Seattle sun. The arrest made national headlines, transforming the Hale family's private nightmare into a cautionary tale splashed across news feeds and true crime podcasts. Today, in the crisp bite of another Pacific Northwest autumn, the case stands as a stark reminder of how ambition can fester into something deadly, leaving echoes in the lives it shattered. The reservoir, once a forgotten stormwater pit, edged by rusting containers and the low rumble of freight trains, is now a marked site, fenced tighter with a small memorial plaque bolted to the chain link. A simple bronze plate etched with Alex's name and dates, flowers wilting there in quiet vigil from strangers moved by the story. Crow's trial unfolded over 6 grueling months in King County Superior Court, a squat brick building downtown where the air always carried the faint must of old wood and hurried footsteps on marble floors. Elena testified first, her voice steady but laced with the raw edge of grief as she described the USB drive's contents, holding up the pouch like evidence of a ghost's warning. Alex knew the risks, she said to the packed gallery, her eyes scanning faces, reporters scribbling, Maria dabbing tears with a tissue, Mia and Theo sitting rigid in the front row, their hands clasped under the bench. He recorded everything because he trusted the truth would protect us. But it didn't protect him. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Reyes with a no-nonsense bob, played the audio clips. Alex's voice, calm yet urgent, detailing Crow's scheme to skim funds from the merger by inflating supply costs and burying complication rates to boost ratings for investors. Crow took the stand in his defense, his lawyer painting him as a scapegoat for a cutthroat industry. Dr. Hale was unstable, overworked, Crow claimed, his tone oily smooth, fingers drumming the witness box as rain streaked the courtroom windows outside. He fabricated those files out of resentment. I was fixing a sinking ship, not sabotaging it. But the evidence piled against him like storm debris. His partial prints on the warehouse container, cell data placing his burner phone within 50 yards of the reservoir at 5:05 a.m., and a deleted email chain from his laptop showing threats to silence dissenters in the department. A whistleblower nurse who'd overheard Crow muttering about Alex crossing lines corroborated the tension, her testimony delivered in a whisper that carried through the hushed room. He said, "Some people don't know when to quit." It chilled me. The jury deliberated for 3 days, the wait agonizing for the Hales as they huddled in a nearby diner, the clink of coffee cups and sizzle of hash browns a mundane counterpoint to their tension. Theo, now 17 and towering over Elena at 6'1", paced by the window, his soccer build honed from years of channeling anger into goals. "If they let him walk, Mom, I don't know what I'll do." Mia, 21 and home from her freshman year at UW, gripped Elena's hand, her environmental advocacy sharpened by the fight for justice. "They won't. The video doesn't lie." When the verdict came, guilty on charges of first-degree murder and fraud, relief washed over them like a cleared sky after rain, but it was bittersweet, no resurrection for Alex. Crow was sentenced to life without parole, his appeals dragging into limbo as he rots in a Washington state prison, the clanging gates and fluorescent-lit cells a far cry from his corner office. The hospital merger collapsed under scrutiny, Harborview purging executives and installing ethics training, a quiet revolution born from one man's stand. Financially, the Hales received a settlement from the hospital's board, millions to cover the wellness center's expansion and the kids' futures. But Elena funneled much into a foundation in Alex's name, funding scholarships for med students from low-income backgrounds, the kind he once was. He'd want it to mean something, she told donors at a gala overlooking Elliott Bay, the ferry horns moaning in the distance like distant laments. Life for the family has stitched itself back, thread by fragile thread. Elena, at 50, runs her center with a quiet authority. Her classes now, including grief workshops, where participants share stories under the soft glow of Himalayan salt lamps, the lake's ripple visible through rain-spattered glass. She's remarried, gently, to a kind pediatrician named Mark who met her at a support group, his presence a steady warmth without erasing Alex's shadow. They live in the same Madison Park house, its decks hosting barbecues where laughter rings out again, though the empty chair at the head lingers in Elena's peripheral vision. Mark respects the space, joining Theo for pickup games in the yard, the thud of the ball a rhythmic therapy. Mia graduated with honors, her thesis on urban waterway pollution, dedicating a chapter to the Duwamish and Ross Reservoir, probing how industrial neglect mirrors human oversight. "Dad's story isn't just tragedy," she says in interviews, her voice firm over the hum of a coffee shop blender. "It's a call to protect what's hidden." She's dating a fellow activist, their weekend spent kayaking the Sound, the salt spray a balm against old wounds. Theo, a college freshman on a soccer scholarship at Gonzaga, calls home weekly, his dorm room posters of pro leagues mixed with a framed photo of Alex at his first game, whistle gleaming. "I scored twice last match, coach," he jokes to Elena over the line, the static crackle underscoring the miles. But in quieter moments, like drives through Spokane's foggy streets, he admits the what-ifs still gnaw. Wish he could have seen it. What we know today is pieced from forensics and fragments. Alex was lured or followed to the reservoir, confronted over the evidence, and pushed in a moment of rage, his body likely swept into the bay's currents or snagged in the underwater maze. Divers scoured again post-trial, sonar pings echoing through the murk, but the sea keeps its secrets. Tides shifting debris, crabs scavenging what time erodes. No remains surfaced, leaving the Hales with a grave marker in a lakeside cemetery, etched wildflowers blooming around it in spring, tended by Elena's steady hands. The case closed officially 2 years ago, files archived in Voss's office, now dusted with newer stacks. The detective retired last spring, bumping into Elena at a market stall piled with heirloom tomatoes, their red skins bursting with juice. "You fought hard," Voss said, hugging her briefly, the crowd's chatter fading. "He'd be damn proud." Elena nodded, basket heavy on her arm. "We all are, but it's never over, is it?" Yet questions linger like the fog that shrouded that fateful dawn. Why didn't Alex confide more in Elena about the threats, beyond those hidden recordings? Was there a deeper network at the hospital, accomplices who slipped away in the scandal's wake? And what of his final moments? Did he fight back, call out into the mist, or simply fall silent as the water claimed him? The badge, preserved in a shadow box on the mantel, catches the light now and then, a plastic relic prompting endless reflections. For the Hales, justice came, but closure remains elusive, a horizon they chase through Seattle's rainy vales. In a world of hidden currents, Alex's story whispers, some mysteries endure, urging us to listen closer to the ones we love.